All right, positive energy all the time. Good to see you all. We're going to get into some more vegan history. I went through part one a couple days ago. This is part two. I'm covering my experience coming up as a vegan and everything that was going on at that time to try to paint a picture for you what it was like. And just to have this information saved and documented because a lot of this information is rare and different people that became vegans at different times would have a different outlet, a different, they would see it differently. They would have a different experience, especially depending on where they lived at. So in this one, I'm going to be covering for me. I'm born and raised in Chicago, but I moved to LA and then I moved to Hawaii. Then I came back to LA and then I came back to Chicago. So it's going to cover veganism in my lifetime, but also in different areas and what was going on at that time period in them areas. So those areas, what was it like? And at that particular time period. And so part one, we started in 1978. And now I would say we're probably still in the 70s, headed to maybe the early 80s. I'm going to go back and fill in some areas that that goes along with part one. And by the time I finish this, it should be a nice collection of information. I have to try to pull up and think about what it was like. And one thing I'm noticing is that some pictures and some things I can't find. So it's really important to document this history because if you don't document this history, uh, it'll be gone. And that's for sure. Good to see you, G-Ra. Rasta Man. Ras Malachi, more power. Good to see you. So I'm going to start and I'm going to finish where I started. I was talking about the 70s. So I'm going to start part two in the 70s where I left off at. I became a vegetarian in 1978. And there was a little process that happened in my life that really just manifested into that. But I didn't want to talk too much about my life. I want to talk about the the vegetarianism and veganism that I was surrounded by, and just my life briefly as I interchanged with those things. And when I got out of high school, I went and worked with my auntie. She worked for WFR Printing Company. And one of the books that we were printing was this book by Dick Gregory. We were printing this book. And what's interesting about it is this book has two covers. But this is the one that we was printing right there that I'm showing you. I don't know much about this cover. Because at the factory we worked at, or I worked at, this is the cover that I was working on. And what's interesting is that I worked a night shift. And when you work the night shift and you get off at 7:30 in the morning, that's like 5 in the evening for people that work the day shift. So, you finna go do things. And my friend, he went to Circle Campus, the psychology went to. So I would go up there. And one day up there, he says, Dick Gregory was going to be speaking. So I went to see Dick Gregory. And that was the first time I heard somebody talking about being a vegetarian. And he was talking about all the things wrong with the food and cigarettes being sprayed. That's why they keep burning and all type of stuff. So my mind started spinning. But it was very interesting because I knew Dick Gregory from my parents, watching him on Ed Sullivan and stuff like that. And then because I knew him, I recognized the book that I just showed you. But that wasn't enough to make me change the way I eat. But it did plant the seed. And what's interesting, I didn't really read his book, but we printed another book called Make Your Juicer Your Drugstore. And I did read some of this book. And this book did affect me a little bit. It made a lot of sense. And it was basically saying, take care of yourself and maybe you won't be at the doctor. And this is something we was printing in 1978 too. We were printing that. And the interesting thing about that is that one came out in 1978. So that was fresh off the presses. I actually worked on printing that. But Dick Gregory's book came out in 1974. And so with that book coming out in 1978, I ended up working on that book when I came back to the factory. It wasn't there when I was there because I worked there twice. I worked there and then I left and I went to college. And when I got out, I left college and I went back to the book factory. So some time had went by. And so when I went to see Dick Gregory, this was constantly planting seeds in my head. listening to this information. I'm thinking, this is interesting. So eventually I became a vegan. And I didn't know I was a vegan. I thought I was a vegetarian because I didn't realize I was a vegan until the 80s. I say that in part one. So we didn't know we was vegan. The word vegan wasn't being used in the United States. We were vegetarians. But we was not really vegetarians. Do mess with dairy and eggs and stuff like that. So we were vegans, but we thought we were vegetarians. And there used to be, so you start meeting different people that do different things. And one of the things that people used to do is they used to go get colonics. And a colonic is a thing where you go and they put something up your back end and they shoot water in you and they fill you up with water. And then when the water comes out, all of the waste comes out. Later, I found out a brother told me not to do that because it could put a hole in your intestines. So I never did that again. He said, all you got to do is drink a gallon of water a day and everything will come out anyway. But there was another woman in town that was known for helping people, and that was Miss Fulton. And Miss Fulton is the one that converted Dick Gregory. So there used to be buzzes and whispers about Miss Fulton, who is really one of the leading people in vegetarian history. Okay, before you heard anything about Dr. Sebi, before you heard anything about Dick Gregory, because she's the one converted Dick Gregory. And she helped Dick Gregory write this book. You see her name at the bottom, edited by James I. McGraw with Elvina Fulton. So Miss Fulton is really number one when it comes to vegetarianism. And so I used to hear about her name buzzing around, but being it's 1976, 77, 78, I'm close to a teenager and I'm 18, 19. And technically, you're still kind of treated like a teenager, 18, 19, 20. 20 is basically a teenager in life. I mean, not in numbers, but in life, you're treated like a teenager. If you was a sophomore and you have friends that was a junior, they're still your friends. So I was hearing about her, but I never really got a chance to see what was going on with her. But she was located at this shop right here. I drove by one day and I took a picture. I never really got to go and get a colon cleanse from her. And so these are early school vegan, but we thought we was vegetarian days that people don't talk about much. Miss Fulton converted Dick Gregory, and Dick Gregory converted a bunch of us. And I used to go see Dick Gregory lecture all the time, and he was always talking about, the things we consumed along with other things. So eventually, after running into a brother at the music college and running back into him, his name was Peter, I finally went vegetarian in 1978. And as a vegetarian, we would just eat the same basic things our parents ate, but just a vegetarian version of it. So it's still collard greens, mustard greens, turnip greens, cabbage, sweet potatoes, all kind of beans, black eyed peas, and this is what we would eat. And because my parents from the South, they ate a whole lot of vegetables. That did make it a little easier. Now, one of the first things we learn is how to make our own milk. And so we began to make almond milk. And what you would do is if you see these almonds on your left, you would soak the almonds for a little while, and then the cover would come off of them. You see the almond cover on the right side of the plate. And so you would soak your almonds and blanch them. That's what it's called, blanching, and take that brown part off. And then you would take these off-white almonds and throw them in a blender and blend them up and slowly add water so you can liquefy it. And that's how we used to make almond milk. And so you had to know how to do your almonds like this. Now, one of the places we used to go, besides the health food store and the juice bar, was General Nutrition Center. Because General Nutrition Center had some vegetarian items, would have some different types of juices or something that you can consume. You can see the various General Nutrition advertisement. And if you look at the one from 1969 to 1978, that's the one, that's the advertisement they was using when I became a vegetarian, and the one from 1978 to 1986. So General Nutrition was a spot people would go, and they had little things, little chips and things like that that you can get. And they definitely had some vegetarian items where we would get. That was rough trying to figure out what to eat. And one of the things we used to use for a snack was Jay's potato chips and avocados. We'd get a bag, not a whole box, but we'd get a bag of potato chips, which they didn't even have sea salt potato chips back then. So we eat regular potato chips, two avocados in your bag. You go out to the beach, you got a ripe avocado. And this was a snack for me and my friends as we was transitioning. Avocado and potato chips was a snack for sure. So I want to document all this stuff. And that went along great. Now we were doing something because, as I said in part one, we had figured out how to take our food and put nutritional yeast and olive oil on it to make like a butter. And that helped us get through. And we were fortunate enough to have some margarine eventually come on the scene called Willow, the Willow Run margarine. So that tried to make everything a little bit better. So at least we can make some toast. And, we had a couple of health food stores that we could go to, like Sherwin's, and we could go there. So that added some relief. And there was one on the west side, but not the west side of Chicago, but the west side of the south side. So southwest, and that was a health food store called Southtown. So we were slowly beginning to find out where we can get things from. and slowly, creating a plant-based vegan lifestyle. We ended up with breads we could eat. And that was a way to slowly build what you see going on now. What you see going on now was all built in that era. And that's for sure. That's a part of the plant-based vegan history. And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to end this here because the next thing I'll talk about is when I'm leaving and I'm heading to California. So I don't want to mix the two together. This pretty much covers the Chicago area when I first became a vegan in 1978. And I'm pretty much covered most of the information that basically life was pretty much like this until I left and went to California. Then things changed. We did know though that Elijah Muhammad was getting people to eat better. And we did know that Miss Fulton helped him eat better. So we did realize that he was pushing Eat to Live too. And that was a big deal. That was a big encouragement for those that was trying to figure out how to eat better. That was a big encouragement because it was really hard. It was hard. But Dick Gregory was a great influence. We was always hearing about him fasting and everything like that. So that was a big help. Dick Gregory was a big influence for veganism as it is today. There's no ifs, ands, and buts about that. He really helped a lot. A lot. So that we would have some type of influence to get us from eating so bad. You know, the food was real bad. But he was such a great teacher. It helped a lot. It helped a whole lot. That's for sure. So I'm grateful to Dick Gregory. And that's part 2. That goes on to part 1. And I'll be here in a couple of days with part 3. And that's when we're going to go from this point on. And then we're going to start traveling across to California and Hawaii and explaining what that was like. If I was you, I would download all of these vegetarian and vegan history. They're definitely classics for sure. And you should try to make sure you eat the best you can, take care of your health so that you'll feel great. Because if you don't feel that good, it's not a good thing. And know that this way of eating is very positive. It's a very positive thing. And it's going to definitely pay off in the long run. And you might want to, get a blender and make your own milks again. You might want to do that. So once again, victory. And I will see you all soon with the part 3 as we go into California, which is a whole different thing because as you move across the country, they eat different and the vegans eat different. So next time I come, we're going to get into California, what that was like, and then we're going to get into being a vegan in Hawaii, what that was like, and then the whole journey back, same stops, California for a while, then here. And there's a whole process of how we eat that goes along with that. All right, so stay positive, eat right, and take care of yourself.